Y News with Angelo Castro III, William Theo, and Darlene Basingan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare Marawi City liberated.
Good evening. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana announced today the end of military combat operations in Marawi City. Nel Maribuhok will tell us why.
After 154 days of the siege of Marawi by the Daesh-inspired multi-ISIS group, or after a week since the Commander-in-Chief declared the liberation of Marawi, we now announce the termination of all combat operations in Marawi.
Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana formally announces today the end in the battle between government troops and the ISIS-inspired multi-terror group in Marawi City. Lorenzana says soldiers and policemen were able to neutralize all the remaining armed men holed up in the strife-torn area. The defense chief notes they are still assessing the situation in the entire Mindanao before giving recommendations to President Rodrigo Duterte as the soonest possible time.
We will determine also the security situation in the whole of Mindanao, and we will be making the recommendation to the President soon.
Malacanang meanwhile calls for public unity so the government could focus on the rehabilitation of the war-torn area. According to presidential spokesperson Ernesto Abella, the liberation of Marawi City shows the success of the country in the fight against violent extremism and radicalism. Abella also appeals to the public to help the government in continuously achieving peace and security for the Philippines. The palace spokesperson also commends government troops, especially the cops and soldiers who sacrificed their lives to save the country. The Defense Secretary says although the government wasn't able to completely annihilate the ideology of the violent extremism, it is clear that with the cooperation of the entire southern region, the public and the government can prevent terrorism from further spreading. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Meanwhile, the military can now focus on clearing and civil military operations in Marawi City. Leah Ilagan will tell us why.
The work of military troops in Marawi City is not yet done, although the Department of National Defense or DND declared the termination of combat operation in the now strife-torn area. Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP spokesperson Major General Restituto Padilla says government troops still have to clear buildings in the city of improvised explosive devices, traps, and other types of bombs.
Kaya ang nabanggit kanina ay nagtatapos na ang combat operation, pero ang military operation, kasama na dyan ang CMO, ang clearing operation at ito pang kinakailangan gawin at tulad ng mga engineering activities ay parte pa rin ang military operations natin.
Padilla explains the military will not allow putting at risk the lives of civilians. That's why some government troops will remain in the city.
Yung angkop ng pwersa ay mananatili para provide ng security at ma-ensure na tuloy-tuloy ang magiging reconstruction, rehabilitation, and rebuilding ng Marawi.
He says authorities will still have to carefully study if it is now safe for the evacuated Marawi City residents to visit their homes.
Ayaw natin magkaroon ng ironical situation na nakapag-survive ng mahigit 5 buwan ng mga kababayan natin sa evacuation center sa hirap na natira. At napuputulan lang ng kamay o paa o mamatay lang dahil nasa buga ng IDD, nasa buga ng mga bombang hindi pumutok.
The military spokesperson also notes government troops are still sweeping through buildings in the strife-torn area to assure that no terrorist is left uncaptured. Leah Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue, Camp Aguinaldo.
The government's post-conflict needs assessment will start immediately after the clearing operations in Marawi City. The Office of the Civil Defense is confident that the government's refusal to accept new grants from the European Union is not a setback to its rehabilitation efforts in the city. Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
The Office of the Civil Defense will follow the pronouncements of President Rodrigo Duterte not to accept new grants from the European Union or EU, even if it is for the rehabilitation and recovery of Marawi City. OCD Deputy Administrator Assistant Secretary Christopher Porissima says this will not affect the rehabilitation efforts because of other possible donors.
I don't think it will be a setback. We've been receiving pledges of support, and we've been receiving support from many other sectors, and therefore we will be open to evaluating all their pledges and all the supports that they plan to give.
The official said countries that already provided donations were Thailand, India, and China. The World Bank and Asian Development Bank is also assisting the country. President Duterte has said that the government will not receive grants from EU for now because of its alleged interference to the country's sovereignty and criticisms to the government's anti-drug war. Meanwhile, Task Force Bangon Marawi's post-conflict needs assessment will immediately start as soon as the military finishes its clearing operations. The government is also studying whether to implement or not an identification or ID system for the security of internally displaced persons or IDPs. Most of the rehabilitation fund of the government this year is also allocated for the relief operations of 72,000 families affected by the crisis in Marawi.
Ang priority dyan ay yung patuloy nating pagbibigay ng relief sa ating IDPs. No? I think as proposed, a big chunk of the 5 billion allotted this year will still be for the relief efforts.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
The Department of Education will recommend to President Rodrigo Duterte the realignment of the department's fund in line with the rehabilitation efforts in Marawi City. Here's why from Aiko Miguel.
The Department of Education or DepEd believes the collapse of structures in Marawi City should not bring with it the dreams of the children there. According to Education Secretary Leonor Briones, the youth should still have the motivation to finish their studies and to have a better future despite the suffering they endured. This is why the Education Secretary says she will ask the President to realign the funds for the construction of new school buildings across the country to the efforts to rehabilitate the strife-torn area. Secretary Briones says once the proposal is approved, they will immediately begin the rehabilitation and reconstruction of schools in Marawi City. She explains it is of utmost importance now to repair the damaged schools at the soonest possible time. Briones also notes the DepEd should not also fall in line to seek funds from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council or NDRRMC and to wait long, saying the students affected by the crisis should go back to school at once.
Kaya ang request namin, kung payagan kami na for calamity related in the case of Marawi, the extent of the damage is so huge. It's the biggest, I think, na talagang direct damage sa DepEd. We have the fund for buildings, for new school buildings, abot ng 4 billion. So part of our BFF will have to be used.
Part of the rehabilitation of the school in Marawi is the conduct of Brigada Eskwela that the DepEd will begin at the soonest possible time, alongside the visit of Secretary Briones in the area. DepEd will also launch the so-called Adopt a School program in the city to hasten the repair of damaged schools with the help of the private sector. The Education Secretary also announces DepEd prefers to accept donations in the form of construction materials and school equipment than monetary donations. Briones explains the construction of school buildings would become faster if the materials are already prepared, instead of waiting for the auditing and liquidation of the donated amounts.
And besides, ang military din is going into construction itself. Although we'd prefer sana to advise the use of our own standards for the resiliency aspect of the schools. Kasi pataas na ng pataas ang requirements for calamity-related events.
For now, DepEd continues to conduct assessment on the damaged school campuses to determine where to begin the repair and rehabilitation. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
Meanwhile, trainees in the special course training have gone through the longest and bloodiest test in Marawi City. Mon Hokson will tell us why.
With the conclusion of the combat operation in Marawi City, more than 200 military and police personnel have also completed their special course training. The Marawi crisis served as their test mission before graduating and be a legitimate member of the Special Forces and Scout Rangers. The 5-month encounter in Marawi City is considered as the longest test mission in the history of those who've undergone the training for the elite force.
Hindi kami nag-iwanan. Kahit anong mangyari, kahit nasa danger, makikita mo na kahit kayang gapangin yung wounded in mga fire ng laban. Thank you din po sa stakeholders, sa mga sponsors po namin, lalo na sa pagkain, sa mga prayers po na kung wala sa inyo, nagbibigay ng lakas sa amin dito sa loob.
Palencia, however, claims that what they have gone through was not a joking matter as they risked their lives in the field.
Yung first day po namin dito sa Marawi, May 25 po, unang salang po namin, unang putok, patayan agad kami ng 3 po. Kahit po, nagkaroon kami ng lakas ng loob na bumawi. Di namin alam kung saan yung kalaban. Pumasok kami isang platoon lang, kalaban namin may 100. Akala namin mamatay kami lahat. Pero due to sa tulungan namin, talagang naging successful tong campaign natin para liberate yung Marawi po.
With the completion of the training, the graduates will be given 1 month to rest. With this development, Army Chief Lieutenant General Joselito Bautista claims that it was not only those who have gone through the test mission who learned lessons in the Marawi siege, but the whole armed forces.
Una namin natutunan dito is pagpasok at pag-clear ng building. Sinabi ko nga, doon sa kabundukan, wala kang i-clear na building doon. Yung mga structures doon, talagang bahay kubo. Kaya walang masyadong hirap dito. Dito, nahirapan kami dito, particularly sa approach at pag-assault ng buildings.
Meanwhile, from the first time since the Marawi crisis ignited, Marawi City government has finally held its flag-raising ceremony at the City Hall. Marawi City Mayor Mahul Gandamra also ordered an investigation on the missing LGU equipment and documents despite the fact that the multi-ISIS group was not able to penetrate the City Hall. Mon Hokson, UNTV, News and Rescue.
Wives share fear and pride as their husbands battle and now return from Marawi City. They say being a wife of a soldier is just the same as being in the front line of war. Here's why from Marge Pelayo.
They say army wives are the silent ranks. Though they are not the ones who go to the battlefield, they are the ones who stand by their husbands, supporting and inspiring them while the soldiers are away on duty. Being a wife of a soldier, they say, they know very well what is it like to be in the front line.
Yung takot po syempre nandun po kasi tuwing sa araw-araw na laman ng balita yung gulo doon. Tapos pag mag-uusap kami, pag tumatawag siya, narinig namin yung sabog, yung putukan po. So natatakot po kami, nalulungkot din.
Okay na sa akin yung okay ka, mag-text ka na okay lang kami. Kasi mas nakakakaba yung hindi ka mag-text maghapon. Tapos baka mamaya may mag-text na lang na iba.
They say they learn to respect their husband's profession and the challenges, the demands, the good and even the bad consequences of serving in the military.
Lagi ko po inisip yung sinabi niya, kahit nasaan ka, kung talagang oras mo na yung oras mo na. Kaya pinapalakas ko na lang po sa loob ko. O tanggap po namin na ang kanilang nasa hukay na yung isa.
Sabi niya, ano ka ba, ba't ka umiiyak? Sabi niya, kaya mo yan. Sabi ko, sa bagay, sa isip-isip ko lang, hindi lang naman ako ang asawa na mapupunta sa Marawi yung asawa. Marami rin naman kami.
Now that their husbands are home, no one is even prouder than all of the military spouses of the government troopers who battled and won the war in Marawi City. In last Friday's Heroes Welcome ceremony, the Philippine Army expressed gratitude to the families of the brave soldiers.
Malaki rin ang sakripisyong ibinigay ninyo sa tuwing nawawalay ang ating mga bayani upang gampanan ang kanilang tungkulin, kung kaya't nais ko kayong pasalamatan para sa inyong pag-unawa, pagsuporta at pagdarasal sa mga sundalong bayani.
Meanwhile, Malacanang assures the soldiers that President Rodrigo Duterte will make good on his promise to send them to Hong Kong for a vacation. According to Presidential Communications Office Secretary Martin Andanar, some firms from the private sector have already vowed to help the president to fulfill his promise. He added that a private airline company has even vowed to provide free flights to Hong Kong for the soldiers. Marge Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
And authorities advise the public to never believe dubious individuals asking for financial aid for the victims of the crisis in Marawi City. Here's why from Rajel Adora.
The Makati City Police recently arrested 2 suspects who posed as officials of the Department of Interior and Local Government and extorted money allegedly for the residents affected by the war in the strife-torn area. 63-year-old Ricardo Simbulan and his 39-year-old live-in partner Maitu Sambayan were arrested in an entrapment operation by the Department of Interior and Local Government or DILG. The suspect's modus operandi was to pose as officials of the DILG and extort money for financial aid allegedly for the rehabilitation of the strife-torn Marawi City. The DILG believes Simbulan and Sampayan are involved in a big syndicate. Authorities say the suspects mimic the voice of DILG officer in charge Undersecretary Catalino Cuy and called regional directors of the agency. They will then order the directors to solicit money for the rehabilitation of Marawi City.
We were surprised, yung mga tinatawagan niya, yung mga regional directors namin mismo. And he was directing, kasi nagpapakilala na ako eh. He was directing our regional directors to collect from the, to solicit from the local executives at para daw sa Marawi victims.
Last October 12, the suspect called the Region 2 director of the DILG and introduced himself as Cuy. He then asked for ₱500,000 pesos. After learning of the modus operandi, the DILG immediately conducted an entrapment operation that led to the arrest of the 2 suspects.
May nangsusulisit ng pera para nga sa Marawi. And then nasabi sa amin na sa area nga ng Comembo area, yung gagawing payoff o yung sa isang money remittance center. So, kaya nagpadala tayo ng agad ng mga tauhan.
On the other hand, the suspect denied the allegations.
Hindi po. Ito po, nakalimutan ko anong pangalan ng pulis na muli sa akin na siya rin nagpanggap na tawag dito yung deposit ng pera. Aka Nestor Jeronimo. Siya po, ang katawag niya, katext niya po, yung taong sinasabi ko.
Authorities continue to investigate the possible accomplices of the suspects who abused the kind heart of those who wish to help the conflict-affected residents of Marawi City. Rajel Adora, UNTV News Rescue, Philippines.
In other news, Malacanang declares November 13 to 15 as special non-working days in Metro Manila as well as in the provinces of Bulacan and Pampanga because of the conduct of the 31st Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN-related summits. This is based on Proclamation number 332 signed by President Rodrigo Duterte. This means there will be no classes and work in both public and private offices and schools in the said areas as they will be directly affected by major activities related to the summit. Meanwhile, the Metro Manila Development Authority or MMDA said suspension of classes on November 16 to 17 in Metro Manila will also proceed.
Nagpass ng resolution ng RPOC, yung Regional Peace and Order Council, ang nagko-compose ito mga Metro Manila mayors. So unanimously nag-approve sila I think 2 weeks ago na wala nang pasok all levels in Metro Manila ng schools, hindi office, schools lang ng November 16 and 17.
ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting has formally opened today at Clark City in Pampanga. Grace Casin tells us why.
Defense ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations on Monday started their high-level security dialogue in Clark to discuss security issues facing the region, including drug trafficking, maritime conflicts, and the threat of violent extremism in the region. The Philippines, chairman of ASEAN this year, is hosting the 11th ADMM and 4th ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus that includes 8 of the ASEAN dialogue partners, namely Australia, China, Japan, India, New Zealand, South Korea, Russia, and the United States. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said at the opening ceremony that his country will push several initiatives during the 2-day meeting, including a 3-year work program focused on streamlining, synergizing, and rationalizing ADMM efforts.
We will be cooperating with all countries around the region, not only China, but especially ASEAN, who are vulnerable to this kind of security threats. especially Malaysia and Indonesia, Singapore, and Brunei, who have all Muslim populations that could potentially become threat to regional security.
The ADMM is the highest defense consultative and cooperative mechanism in the ASEAN. ADMM aims to promote mutual trust and confidence through greater understanding of defense and security challenges, as well as enhancement of transparency and openness among the 10 ASEAN member states. Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Department of the Interior and local government sets to deploy around 58,000 security personnel from various agencies to the ASEAN Summit. Rajel Adora will tell us why.
Preparations for the forthcoming ASEAN Summit to be held on November 13 to 15 are now underway. The Department of the Interior and Local Government reports that it will be deploying around 58,000 security personnel from the 21 agencies under it.
Similar to what we had in 2015 yung APEC. Kasi almost the same number of head of state ang darating dito sa atin.
Yusek Catalino Cuy once again assures that there will be no total lockdown in EDSA just to accommodate the convoy of the delegates. The official clarifies that only one lane will be assigned for the ceremonial route from Clark to Manila. The Clark International Airport will be the entrance and exit points of the ASEAN Summit delegates to avoid other flights in the NAIA to be affected by the event.
Yung experience natin noon, APEC 2015, wherein there were about 420 flights that were affected during that time. I think canceled yung iba, plus 200 more na affected.
Around 20 world leaders are expected to attend the ASEAN Summit, including US President Donald Trump. Rajel Adora, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Senate President Aquilino Pimentel III leads the delegation of the Philippines in the United Kingdom following an invitation from the British Parliament. Dennis Damasco will tell us why.
8 Philippine senators are now in the United Kingdom to attend the British Group Inter-Parliamentary Union from October 23 to October 25. Joining the Philippine delegation are Senate President Aquilino Pimentel III, Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon, and Senators Nancy Binay, Grace Poe, J.B. Ejercito, Lauren Legarda, Sherwin Gatchalian, and Juan Edgardo Angara. Through the invitation of the British Parliament, Senate President Aquilino Pimentel III says the event is a good sign for the improving relationship between the UK and the Philippines.
I'm experiencing the interest of the world in the Philippines. Grabe, nagugulat ako. I already declined the invitation from the Belarus Parliament. Marami invitations talaga, left and right.
Senators met with UK Speaker of House of Commons John Bercow. Afterwards is the meeting with the Speaker of the House of Lords, Lord Fowler. On Wednesday, the senators will have the opportunity to observe during the so-called question time, where the members of the Parliament will have the chance to directly ask questions to British Prime Minister Theresa May. Meanwhile, the Philippine senators also had the opportunity to visit and check on the conditions of the Filipinos in the country's capital city, London.
Minsan lang kami makakita ng senator na nakikinig sa aming mga OFW. Matagal na po akong OFW pero hindi pa namin naparating sa gobyerno kung ano ang mga hinaing namin, ang concerns, ang issues ko. Sana po gamitin ng gobyerno ang mga OFWs in more productive way po. So hindi lang sa mga tourism kundi sa education din po.
Among the issues the senators answered during their stay in the United Kingdom are the abuses on overseas Filipino workers and the alleged extrajudicial killings in the Philippines, among others.
Maganda po yung ganitong mga dialogues para po pag magbuo kami ng palisiya sa Pilipinas, at least may basis. Meron kaming sinusolusyonan na problema. Pagbalik po namin ay gagawin natin ang lahat natin makakaya para matulungan sa lahat. Make sure, masigurado na yung protection ay nabibigay sa kanila at pantay ang pagtingin po sa ating mga OFW. Thank you.
Dennis Damasco, UNTV News and Rescue, London, United Kingdom.
Next on Y News. President Rodrigo Duterte accepts the resignation of Comelec Chief Andres Bautista effective immediately.
The National Housing Authority targets to relocate more than 100,000 informal settlers in the National Capital Region until 2019.
And the UN member countries arrive in the Philippines to tackle protection of migratory animals.
Y News will be right back. President Rodrigo Duterte has accepted the resignation of Comelec Chief Andres Bautista effective immediately. This is contrary to Bautista's earlier announcement that he will only step down from his post by the end of the year. In a press conference, Bautista said Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea sent a letter accepting his resignation effective immediately. He adds that he respects the decision of the president and somehow feels relieved.
It's a mixture, no? Talagang halo ng merong kalungkutan, meron din namang parang relief. At
relief dahil
parang yung responsibilidad ay natanggal na rin sa aking balika.
Meanwhile, in a text message tonight, Congressman Reynaldo Umali says they will still proceed to the scheduled hearing tomorrow to write the articles of impeachment against Bautista until they receive the confirmation from Malacanang. Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte leads the launching today of a pro-Duterte alliance called Tapang at Malasaki. Here's why from Nel Mariboho.
I call on all the supporters of President Duterte to unite and all those who want to join us.
Presidential daughter and Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte leads the launching today of the pro-administration alliance called Tapang at Malasakit. Present during the launching were the personalities known to be allies of President Rodrigo Duterte. These include Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano, Ilocos Norte Governor Amy Marcos, and former President and now Manila Mayor Joseph Estrada. Mayor Duterte says the initiative's main goals are to unite the country and to stop political opponents from going against each other.
What we are trying to say is that we come together for our country, not go against each other to the detriment of our country. Parang napansin ko kasi isang taon na tayo pa rin yung nag-aaway-away na dapat sana nagtutulungan tayo.
The Pro-Duterte Alliance was launched amid the administration's push for reforms and programs, especially now that the crisis in Marawi City has ended. Presidential spokesman Ernesto Abella, meanwhile, explains the alliance is not created to prevent the alleged destabilization plot against the government.
I don't know about the need for anything at this stage. She's simply saying that as far as I understand her, she's simply gathering all the forces, all the people towards a more constructive engagement in nation building.
Members of the Tapang at Malasakit emphasized that the alliance is not created for politics and not as a preparation for the upcoming 2019 midterm elections. Nel Mariboho, UNTV News and Rescue, Taguig City.
Senator Antonio Trillanes IV was indicted for libel before the Makati Regional Trial Court over his allegations against former Vice President Jejomar Binay. In the information filed by the DOJ, Trillanes is charged for his claim of an alleged 100 million peso yearly racket of the Binays. In his text messages to reporters in August 2015, Trillanes said they will expose before a Senate Blue Ribbon subcommittee hearing the alleged ghost senior citizens in Makati who are claiming benefits. Trillanes has a separate libel case over his claim that two Court of Appeal justices received 50 million pesos in exchange for a temporary restraining order to stop the suspension which the Ombudsman issued against then City Mayor Junjun Binay. The parents of Karl Angelo Arnaiz asked the Department of Justice resolve the killing of their son in the soonest time possible. Meanwhile, 12 Caloocan policemen denied involvement in the killing of Kian Lloyd de los Santos. Roderick Mendoza will tell us why.
The parents of Karl Arnaiz rebutted the claim of two Caloocan camps that the teenager was killed in a legitimate police operation. They pointed out that the taxi driver, Tomas Bagal himself, said there was no shootout and the operation is scripted. This is further controverted by the testimony of witness Joe Daniel, who saw the cops shot Karl while he was handcuffed and kneeling. Forensic examination result also showed the victim was tortured before he was killed. Bagal maintained he was only coerced by PO1 Jeffrey Perez and PO1 Reike Arquilita, who threatened to kill him and his family if he will not obey the script, but insisted he was robbed by Karl and Reynaldo de Guzman alias Kulot.
Ang sinasabi ng pamilya, hanggang nagsasabi siya na holdapper yung anak nila, hindi sila maniniwala kay Bagal.
Bagal and the two cops are facing murder, torture, and planting of evidence. Arnaiz's parents pleaded with the DOJ to speed up the resolution of the complaints. Meanwhile, 12 Caloocan policemen deny involvement in the killing of Kian de los Santos. 4 of them who participated in the operation says they were not present in the crime scene when the teenager was killed. The other 8 were not part of the operation and were only named respondents because they were previously assigned with Caloocan Police PCP 7.
Some were on sick leave, some were sick, some were assigned in other places. So you cannot commit a crime when you are not in the place of the commission of the crime. As simple as that.
Preliminary investigation resumes this Wednesday. Roderick Mendoza, UNTV, News and Rescue, Department of Justice.
After the Marawi siege, the Philippine National Police will continue serving arrest warrants to drug personalities, especially narco politicians, included in their arrest order. Monokson will tell us why.
The Philippine National Police will not stop until drug personalities listed in their arrest order, especially narco politicians who are allegedly involved in funding the multi-terrorist group, are arrested. PNP Chief Ronald Bato de la Rosa says they are not violating any orders because this is not an anti-drug operation.
Hindi naman yan anti-drug operations. Hands off na kami sa drugs, di ba? But it is purely service of warrant. So pwede namin ipagpatuloy yung paghahunting sa kanila dahil nga meron silang arrest order, service of arrest order.
The investigation against politicians allegedly helping the Mauti group will also continue. The PNP will also start the rehabilitation of the Marawi City Police Station.
Masakit sa amin yun eh. Naagaw sa amin yun from our position, naagaw ng kalaban, sinunog pa nila. Masakit masyado sa amin. The moral was dampened. But right now, we are trying to reinvigorate the moral of Marawi City Police Station by helping them right away rebuilding their home.
Based on the latest data of the PNP, 7 police officers were killed and 61 were wounded in the war. De la Rosa assures that those who fought in Marawi will be given a reward and promotion. The SAF troops will be back in Manila on Wednesday. Meanwhile, De la Rosa expressed disappointment over those who questioned the planned promotion of PNP Task Force Marawi Commander, Police Senior Superintendent Rolando Anduyan. De la Rosa believes that senior police officials are the ones questioning his decision.
Pumunta siya sa Marawi, makipagpatayan siya doon sa mga terorista kung gusto niya. Because that's what Colonel Anduyan did. Nandun siya, na-wounded siya sa encounter. Anong gusto niyo? Porque senior kayo, nandiyan na kayo sa opisina, walang ginagawa. Kayo iuna ko i-promote. Yung junior na fighting it out with the, where's meritocracy?
De la Rosa believes that his decision is right to give promotion to those who work hard and fought for Marawi. Mon Hokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Crame.
The Bureau of Customs plans to install new X-ray scanners at various ports across the country. Customs Commissioner Isidro La Peña also announces that the BOC will push through with the removal of the green lane system. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
The Senate will pay for the purchase of the Bureau of Customs or BOC of 56 new X-ray scanners that will be distributed at various ports across the country. The move is part of the BOC's effort to tighten the monitoring of cargoes entering the country, especially if the importers and brokers of shipments fail to present complete documents.
I have requested for additional actually, and it was approved by the Senate during the last Senate hearing. That's why yung budget na that has been provided to us, primarily 1.3 of that, 1.3 billion of that will be for the purchase of X-ray machines.
Brokers initially opposed the said system as the inspection in advance of truck take longer, which results into profit losses.
Mga trucks natin na sa loob nakaipit, kami mga broker naman naghahantay na lang din ng mga resulta.
Commissioner La Peña explains the BOC just wants to ensure that no contraband can enter the country. With this, La Peña notes the possibility of removing the green lane system in the BOC. La Peña, meanwhile, assures that they are thinking of ways to address the delay of cargoes once the green lane is totally dismantled.
If there's no need for a green lane, then I will remove that because that's where that 604 kilos pass through. Yung green lane na yan. Until such time that the select computer system has been perfected. It looks like until now it's not perfected. And I cannot allow another 604 kilos to pass through.
Commissioner La Peña says the BOC is continuously looking for ways to improve the processing of the release of cargoes. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
The National Housing Authority targets to relocate the more than 100,000 informal settlers in Metro Manila until the end of 2019. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
The National Housing Authority already completed 84% of more than 100,000 housing units for the informal settlers in the National Capital Region. Around 16,700 of these are in-city resettlements, while the rest are situated in the nearby provinces such as in Rizal and Bulacan. One of the in-city resettlements is the St. Josephville in San Juan City. They are 5-story buildings with an average unit cost of 550,000 pesos. The beneficiaries who occupy the ground floor pay a monthly amortization of 1,000 pesos while higher floors cost lower.
800 yung monthly niya. Hindi katulad dati, nangangamba kami sa sunog. O nga, nasunog na kami. Maayos naman.
Residents here were used to be informal settlers at the same place, but their houses were burned down in 2012. The village chief said they have an advantage now in preventing crime, and they even made their barangay a drug-free community.
Sila mismo nagbabantayan.
The National Housing Authority was able to learn a lesson when the group Kadamay occupied the resettlement sites in Bulacan.
Kung awarded na sa akin ng yun, habang ginagawa pa yan, binabantayan ko na yan. Ganon ang ginagawa namin ngayon.
Ray Pelayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Former Secretary Joseph Emilio Abaya and other officials of the then Department of Transportation and Communications are facing another complaint before the Office of the Ombudsman. Here's why from Joanne Nano.
The lawyers of the Department of Transportation or DOTR filed a graft complaint before the Office of the Ombudsman against former Department of Transportation and Communications or DOTC Secretary Joseph Emilio Abaya and several other former officials of the said agency. The complaints stem from the allegedly anomalous contract they entered into for the maintenance of the Metro Rail Transit or MRT3. Among those included in the complaint are former DOTC Undersecretary for Operations Erwin Lopez, Undersecretary for Planning and Head Negotiating Team Rene Limcauco, Undersecretary for Procurement and Administration Catherine Jennifer Gonzalez, former Assistant Secretary for Bids and Awards Committee Camille Alcaraz, former MRT3 General Manager Roman Buenafe, and several officials of the Busan Universal Rails Incorporated or BURI. Based on the 29-page complaint, the DOTR questioned the alleged 3.81 billion peso contract the then DOTC entered into with BURI when in fact, the company it should had negotiated with was the Busan joint venture. DOTR Undersecretary for Legal Affairs Attorney Rainier Yebra explains it is a clear violation of the Republic Act 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act since the two companies are different.
The Busan joint venture participated in the public bidding, and it was to whom the contract was awarded to. However, now, as presently, instead of forming a joint venture as required by law, what they did was they formed a special purpose company called Buri, and now it's being implemented and being handled by Buri. So we felt that in itself is anomalous or something irregular.
The DOTR officials want Abaya and his co-accused explain why they entered such a transaction. In a text message, Abaya said he has yet to receive a copy of the complaint, but argued the contract they entered with Buri is in accordance with the procurement law. Meanwhile, former MRT General Manager Roman Buenafe and Buri refused to give their sides regarding the allegations stated in the said complaint. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
The Convention on the Conservation of the Migratory Species of Wild Animals is now being held in the Philippines. Here's why from Ray Pelayo.
A United Nations body is now in the Philippines to discuss the welfare of migratory species in the Asia's first Convention on the Conservation of the Migratory Species of Wild Animals. According to the Biodiversity Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources or DENR, the forum would largely help improve the tourism industry of the country. This is especially since DENR notes 40,000 migratory animals composed of 200 species crossed into the Philippines. This includes various kinds of birds and huge fish like whales.
So, ang gusto natin talaga, ma-bring din yung attention ng mga iba't ibang bansa kung gaano kahalaga sa atin yung migratory species natin at kung paano sila makakatulong para ma-lift din natin yung status natin.
If Filipino authorities can prove the huge role of the Philippines in housing migratory species, the country might earn UN member states' support in terms of providing protection to the migratory animals. Having more migratory species might increase the food supply of the Philippines. But for now, capturing such animals is currently prohibited in the country.
Siyempre, kung medyo maghihirap tayo, yung unang nagsasuffer ay yung mga conversion, yung mga habitats nila kasi kino-convert natin for commercial purposes.
The DNR believes UN member states are part of the convention could also help in maintaining the safety of migratory species crossing into oceans like the West Philippine Sea. For now, authorities remain worried over the structures built by China in the shallow parts of the disputed area which served as shelter of various species of fish.
Kung through this conference, mabring natin yung attention ng mga iba't ibang mga bansa, makikita nila kung ano yung, paano sila makakatulong para ma-prevent yung ganung mga iba't ibang threats sa pag-deplete ng population ng migratory species.
The said UN event being held at the Philippine International Convention Center will end on Saturday. Ray Pelayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Pasay City.
Expect a rainy Tuesday in some parts of the country. Tell us why, Leslie.
Yes, Darlene, Typhoon Paula already exited the Philippine area of responsibility and has already landed Japan. But rains will still be experienced in some areas of the country because of the intertropical convergence zone affecting southern Luzon and Visayas. Cloudy skies with scattered rains and thunderstorms will prevail over Metro Manila, Aurora Province, Calabarzon, Bicol Region, Mimaropa, Eastern Visayas, Zamboanga Peninsula, ARMM, and Soc-Sargen. Meanwhile, the rest of the country will be under partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers or thunderstorms, mostly in the afternoon or evening. Temperature forecast shows Metro Manila will have a temperature of 25 to 31 degrees Celsius. Baguio City will have a temperature of 16 to 22 degrees Celsius. Metro Cebu's temperature will range from 24 to 30 degrees Celsius. And Metro Davao temperature will vary from 25 to 33 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, the sun will rise at 5:49 in the morning. That's a weather forecast. Back to you, Dirty.
Thank you, Leslie Longbowen reporting from the UNTV Weather Center. The song Beside Your Heart joins the ASOC Year 6 Grand Finals. Leslie Longbowen is back to tell us why.
Song is Beside Your Heart, Shane Kim Lumanog!
Shane Kim Lumanog's composition Beside Your Heart wins the October monthly finals of the A Song of Praise or ASOC. This means that the song will be among the song entries of ASOC Year 6 Grand Finals.
such an exquisite, sarap na kanta.
It's just one of those songs that the more you hear it, the more you fall in love with it. Congratulations.
Sobrang thankful po at saka blessed.
Shane's song was hailed the third weekly winner of September but was not chosen as the song of the month. With her experience, she wants to share an advice to composers like her who also joined but failed in their first tries.
Never give up po. Meron naman pong every year and gano'n naman po talaga every time na paminsan po hindi po pinapalad gano'n, pero wag po silang mag-give up.
The much-awaited ASO Year 6 Grand Finals will be held at Smart Araneta Coliseum on November 13. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Coming up on Y News. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe vows to prioritize issues on North Korea and the country's aging population after strong election win.
5 former U.S. presidents share stage in a benefit concert for hurricane victims.
And the PNP responders and the AFP Cavaliers now share the top spot of Group A at the League of Public Servants, the UNTV Cup Season 6.
More from Y News after this break. The PNP responders and the AFP Cavaliers share the top spot of Group A at the Hoops for a Cause, the UNTV Cup. Bernard Dadis will tell us why.
The first round of eliminations continues on the League of Public Servants, the UNTV Cup, in the main game of Sunday's triple header at the Pasig City Sports Center. The Senate defenders surrendered to the AFP Cavaliers as the two-time champion made it to a one-point win, 72-71. Coach Sunny Manukat of the Cavaliers says defense was a key to the Soldiers' victory on Sunday.
Number one, defense talaga. Kasi alam namin malakas yung Senate eh. So sabi ko sa kanila, we have to contain all the players inside. Kaya sabi ko, walang magre-relax. Focus lagi sa game.
Romeo Almilor Jr. with 17 points and Rolando Pascual with 13 led the Cavaliers in the scoring department, while Romel Balboa with 17 points and Jeffrey Sanders with 14 points led the defenders. Senator Joel Villanueva, meanwhile, contributed 12 points. In the second game, Malacanang PSC Camao knocked down Pidea Drugbusters 91-85. Coach Louis Gonzalez admits the Drugbusters posed a great challenge, so overconfidence was out of the question.
We don't have to be overconfident dito sa laban na to kasi it's a brand new team. Pero alam mo, mga mature na yan. Now, kung bibigyan pa natin sila ng fighting chance, ayan, maglalaro na maganda yan. And which happened, buti na lang, nakalusot kami.
And in the PNP COA match, the responders eased the victory over the enablers 112-72. The responders stays on the top spot in Group A with 3 games won and no game lost, while COA has a 0-3 win-loss standing. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Those are the reasons behind the news. October 23, 2017. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm William Theo.
And I'm Darlene Basingan, because we need to know.
We will always ask why. Thank you for watching
Y News.